Good morning. This is a PowerPoint about slavery in America from the text Slavery in America from Stages 9 Highlights. I'm going to translate some words into Norwegian and some of what I say into Norwegian as well. Okay. Slavery in America. Many of the first settlers who came to what is now United States were farmers, and they needed people to work for them. There weren't that many people in America at the time, and so they needed people from outside to come and work for them. And it was very good with slaves from Africa because they could buy them and then they could force them to work for nothing on their farms. Some say that about 600,000 slaves were kidnapped, taken from Africa and taken by ship over to America somewhere and then sold as slaves in America and the United States. This was very good for the triangular trade. And this is something you need to remember because you're going to come about the triangular trade more than once later on. But the triangular trade was as slaves were taken from Africa by ships over to America, where they worked and gathered cotton, sugar, and tobacco. And then sugar, tobacco, and cotton were taken over to Europe, mainly England, but all over Europe, to the factories there. And so they produced manufactured goods like textiles or alcohol or the finished products, and then they sent them back to Africa, to the markets. We've heard about that in social studies, to sell them in the colonies, and then so forth and so on and so on. That is the triangular trade. Yeah, manufactured goods like clothes, etc., from Europe back to Africa. There were more slaves in the south. Now, remember, this is a map of today. We're talking about early 1800s, 1600s, 1700s. The United States did not look like this back then. But I thought it was easy for you to just see the map of today, and I'll just explain. There were more slaves in the south, and the red here today is what is considered today as the southern states. And it was like these states who were the southern states back when United States had slaves. Most of the slaves that came worked on plantations, and plantations are huge farms, gårder, kjempestore gårder, where they produced sugar, cotton, coffee beans, rice at some places. And in the early 1800s, northern states stopped using slaves. These were the northern states back then, and in the early 1800s, they stopped using slaves because they thought it was cruel, stygt og slemt, og ikke riktig da, så nordstatene sluttet å bruke slaver tidlig på 1800-tallet, mens sørstatene fremdeles gjorde det. But in 1808, it became illegal to bring new slaves into America. And so it stopped altogether in the north, and former slaves, they were set free. Tidligere slaver ble frigitt I nordstatene, but it still continued in the south because they had these big plantations, and if they were to start paying someone to do their work, they would be in a bad situation financially. Så når det ble stopp på slaver I nord, så fortsatte disse kjempestore plantasjene og gårdene. Og hvis man da skulle begynne å betale for den arbeidet de trengte på disse gårdene, så ville det vært veldig vanskelig økonomisk for mange av de. Så sørstatene trengte slavene mye mer enn nordstatene. So it continued in the south, and that was one of the reasons for the Civil War. United States had a civil war between 1861 and 1865, and it was mainly between the North states and the Southern states. And one of the biggest reasons was the question of slavery, because the North states didn't want slavery and wanted the South to give up their slavery politics. But the South, they needed slaves, they wanted slaves, so they held on. And so that's why, one of the reasons why it became Civil War. The North states won the war, and after 1865, the Southern slaves were set free. But as you know, in America today, in the United States today, and in the 1950s and 60s, there are a lot of segregation and a lot of racism, and that is mainly in the southern states down here. So still, over 140 years later, there are still traces of the slavery, you can say, in a way, in America. Life was very hard as a slave. They had absolutely no rights. They were not allowed to learn how to read or write, and if they could read or write, they were treated very badly. They could be punished very badly. Now, the house servants, the people that worked in the house, were somewhat better off than the slaves that worked on the tobacco, cotton, or rice fields. Here's another spelling mistake, could. The slaves, they could be beaten or whipped if they did not work hard enough. If you were sick, if one of the slaves was sick one day and could not work as hard, they could be whipped, punished, or, you know, you can just think the most imaginable punishments they could use. But maybe the worst thing was that families could be split up. Parents could be separated from their children, and siblings could be separated from each other, and they were never seen again. They were sold as property. If a woman had a child, that child could be sold to another plantation somewhere else, and they could never see each other again, and the mother had no right over their own children. It was really hard to imagine, I know. And it was almost possible to run away. Many slaves did, but what the owners did, they branded them. So, you know, like you do cattle, they branded them. So if they were found, everyone knew where they would send them. And you wouldn't do that because you wouldn't go back because you were whipped or punished very badly. Slavene hadde absolutt ingen rettigheter. De fikk ikke lov til å lese og ikke lov til å skrive. De som jobbet inne som tjenere hadde det litt bedre enn de som jobbet ute på åkerne med å liksom samle inn tobakk, bomull og ris. Og hvis de jobbet dårlig, hvis ikke de fikk det resultatet som eieren ville, for eksempel hvis de var syke en dag, så kunne de bli straffet veldig hardt med å bli pisket på ryggen, slått, sparket, stengt inne. Ja. Det verste du kan tenke deg. Men kanskje det verste med hele slaveriet var at familier de ble delt opp. Foreldre ble tatt fra barna sine ble tatt fra foreldrene sine, og søsken ble sendt rundt om. Det var absolutt ingen som tok hensyn til noen familie her. Hvis en mor fikk et barn mens hun jobbet på en plantasje, så kunne det barnet bli sendt og solgt til hvem som helst. Foreldre hadde ingen rettigheter over barna sine. De ble solgt som eiendeler. Og noen prøvde å rømme, men det var helt nytteløst, fordi at eierne de tok og laget brennmerker, altså de merket slavene sine med sitt merke, sånn at hvis de rømte og ble tatt, og det ble de nesten alltid, fordi at man hadde sporhunder, de hadde jo ikke noe penger, så fant man alltid slavene igjen, og da sendte man de tilbake til den gården de hørte til, fordi at de kjente igjen merket da på slaven. Så det var helt umulig å rømme. So that was it. That was about slavery, and very short. There's so much to talk about when it comes to slavery, but that is all. That's what we have time for.